Okay. Good evening and welcome to How to Build a Fire. I'm Jackie Reason and this is my co-host.
Lily White, hello.
And we are season 7 co-hosts for the How to Build a Fire storytelling series. And we are coming to you live from Zoom tonight in different places. And we're happy to have all of our storytellers. I am a writer and editor and just like some various things on different days. And Lily is?
I'm a musician and piano teacher and writer and occasional storyteller. And yeah, we're just having a ball here on Zoom because I'm trying to get all my far-flung storytellers, you know, while we having a good excuse because it's hard to fly people into Brooklyn, you know. Normally.
Unless you're a pigeon.
All
right.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I was going to say before we get started, Golda asked me, you know, I'm a Bronx girl, proudly. And Golda asked me where in Brooklyn you were. And I said South Slope. And that's she right. was like, well, that's what they told me, but I don't know what that means. So
17th Street and what avenue?
6th Avenue.
Okay.
It's like Greenwood Heights. You know, it's not Park Slope, it's South Slope. It's a total different thing.
They've changed the names. I taught on 1st Street and 7th Avenue and went as far as almost there. It's funny, I'm remembering names from my past that I taught with who lived in the neighborhood. So I've been down that way. Yeah, but I mean, Jackie, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It is really funny how it evolved, right? Like it evolved from being Greenwood Heights. First they called it when I moved there. Now then it turned into Park Slope, but then Park Slope wasn't actually what they wanted it to be anymore and now it's South Slope. So, you know, it really has moved through different names since I lived there.
And I grew up on the last block of Flatbush, Church and Nostrand Avenues. And yeah, and Flatbush Avenue, that was my grounds. There used to be an old cafeteria there, Garfield's.
Is this the story?
No,
it's about to be. Thank you. I was just trying to get it all around.
I think
there's a story there.
It's coming. Let me give a proper introduction to Golda Solomon, our first storyteller tonight. She is a poet, performer, artist, educator, and mom. Adjunct professor, I know associate professor Golda, at Manhattan College and the Borough of Manhattan Community College. So she taught 2 classes today. She's founder and co-host of Art Speak From Page to Performance, ekphrastic writing workshops at Blue Door Art Center in Yonkers, New York, where she's also the poet in residence. She has, and I would, you know, I encourage everyone to go on the website and look at her litany of accomplishments. She writes poetry, she performs poetry. She was the first jazz poet that I ever saw, but I am a late bloomer. And Golda and I met in Brooklyn. She lives in Yonkers, I live in Riverdale, which is fairly close together. And we met at a poetry salon and have been famous friends ever since. And she's still touring and plans to get out with her group, the Jazz and Poetry Choir Collective, as soon as the world opens back up. And Golda's slogan is, we are all artists, we are all writers, we are all poets. So Golda Solomon, please tell us your story tonight.
I think it's so interesting that Nikisha detected I'm a little nervous. And I'm not usually nervous, but this is when you perform or read with your peers, it's a different thing. I must have written 2 stories. I want to thank Open Space, Open Source. There I go with my nervousness. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Terrence. And I look forward to hearing the other storytellers, Michael, Stephen, and I love that Megan's name is Megan Culhane Galbraith. My mother didn't give me a middle name. She only had one left over for my brother. So when Jackie asked me about this, what kind of love have I discovered during the pandemic? My first thought was a feeling of letting go that I couldn't identify. And I felt a deepened love of myself and honesty. I renewed my love for solitude. And there was a renewed love for teaching because I had fought kicking and screaming. Who does communications classes online? My classes are interactive and wonderful. But mostly importantly, the love of letting go. Hold all my calls. Most importantly, the love of letting go of some emotional bricks that had weighed me down. I experienced the final letting go of a marriage that ended many years ago, and I didn't lose how to keep the memory of love alive. It remained intact as a story that could be shared. A marriage may be long over. However, the remnants of discord, hurt, anger remain. And like an itch that you finally scratch sufficiently can be gone. Letting go and enjoying a memory as story is what this has done for me. And it's a love story that will always bring, and even when I was writing this, I felt my heart fluttering again. My story of kismet. I'm a beach baby. At 2 months, my first summer, first glorious sounds. At 13 months, my second summer at the beach. Glorious words, glorious exploring, new steps and walking. Beach 35th Street, Edgemere, Far Rockaway, with my grandmother. The sand, the salt smell of ocean, the sounds of waves crashing, slowing down, ripples as they touched innocent toes. I made sand pies and tested my walking. Ah, but the love story. The marriage to leave my mother's home was behind me. I lived in my own apartment, worked, and put myself in therapy to understand my ravaged, lost childhood and damaged girlhood. It was the mid-1960s, and I was in treatment with Dr. George Weinberg, who used for the first term homophobia. It was rampant then and in denial by many. I was hopelessly hetero, and he unleashed my dormant creative side 2 times a week. Approaching 30 with maturity and hard-won insight a la Freud and modern analytic treatment. Ah, the love story. Summers were a full share in a rented house on Fire Island. For a carefully saved few hundred, a millionaire's vacation every weekend. I met Eric the end of the summer before. We were officially a couple, and I think living then in his 5th floor walk-up studio off Broadway on 86th Street. His lone can of cling peaches and syrup in the fridge now had lots of food for company. My Central Park West apartment at 103rd Street was sublet, not yet let go of, just in case. It was our summer of courtship, matching flouncy cotton pirate pants, wine, and friends who shared the pink house with us just 2 blocks from the beach. The Long Island Railroad to Bayshore, bags of groceries on the ferry, young teens hauling the ropes would be future ferry boat captains. The first whiffs of free on the water. And as we approached and bumped the familiar dock, red wagon waiting to haul our food and drink over patches of concrete and boardwalk. Sounds of the squeaking wheels, you're back, you're back, you're back. Not only was I a beach baby, I was a round midnight birthday baby, just as July 4th disappeared into the 5th. That birthday, it would be leisurely spent. It would be a lovely weekend with friends, but not my honey. He was in the Army Reserves and putting in his 2 weeks of service at Fort Drum at the tip of New York State near Canada. I was content. No, how will I celebrate my birthday without him? Relationships need space. And I had the sun, friends, a good book, and the beach. My birthday night and too much Chablis. I'm a Cab Sauvignon girl now. I left the pink house at dawn. My favorite time on the beach for a walk with the other early risers, the sandpipers, and the gulls flying above, sounding like some of the mothers from my Flatbush childhood. The sand, fresh, renewed, almost virginal. I walked west to Lighthouse, past the nude beach, a flash of fabric, someone's vacated bikini top. The sand at the water's edge packed solid. Some sandpipers had gotten there before me, leaving distinctive markings. I was on my way back for hot coffee and hopefully a half of a bagel left and ready to join my housemates' stories, yawns, and morning smells. The beach that morning was all mine, I thought, or was it? I spotted an early morning runner off in the distance, plenty of room for both of us. Silenced the respected greeting, but wait. As the silhouette got closer, running at a good jog pace, it looked vaguely familiar. The outline, the heft, those worn boxer running shorts, his favorite, coming into view. My heart began to pound. I licked my lips and tasted the salt of pleasure. Lick your lips. Can you taste the Atlantic generously sharing? I still can. There was Eric. He had hitched a ride with a fellow soldier, and there he was making his way to me. Hugs, kisses, unexpected romance on my birthday weekend. Nothing can take that memory away. We even made it to the Fire Island News. What handsome Army reservist made his way to Kismet to celebrate a birthday with his girlfriend from the pink house? The marriage may not have endured, this love story has. Lick your lips once more and taste the sweet and salt of love. Thank you. Thank you.
Mhm.
I think Lily can probably just taste it from jumping in at Coney Island.
And it's the same ocean that's in Ghana. I couldn't get over it. I mean, that damn Atlantic gets everywhere.
Thank you, Golda. You have not told me that story. How did the pandemic help you come to terms with that?
I literally have been writing up a storm. And every time I thought of my ex-husband, it was kindly. My son would come and say, "Oh, Dad, this." And I'd go, "Oh, well, call your dad. He's worried about you." I couldn't believe those words were coming out of my mouth. And I realized that for some strange reason, the way you're hearing so acutely, things just that weren't important left. And that love story, I literally thought about it. I'm a great kosher salt user and sea salt user, and I live near the Hudson, right on it. So it's an estuary, and you literally can smell the salt air in the Hudson River. Did you want a short answer?
Too late.
No, thank you very much. That was splendid. I don't know why you're nervous. Golda's never nervous and she's always on, but I'm glad that you chose to share this story with us tonight. Thank you very much. So usually we switch it off, but tonight we are going to have our next two storytellers, if that's okay. Lily, I'm just asking.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
This month.
Yes, I know. Lily texted me, I think from Aruba, and she said, "Do you have two people?" And so, but you know, there might be a month I only have one, but I am very happy for the two people that I do have tonight. I'm going to introduce them to you both at the same time, because one of the things that I ask people, I always give them some support, but I don't want to know their stories in advance. I enjoy learning with everybody else. So I don't know how they're going to tell their story, but we talked about this. I'm going to introduce them both and then let them take it away. So
I had a really quick question.
Yes, Terrence.
Were you able to tell everybody about that big writing award that you won this week?
Terrence, no.
What?
I know. She's just like me, modest to a fault.
Okay, you're making me warm. Okay, so I won. I'll tell this very quick.
Thank you, Terrence. Put her on the spot. It's only the first of many awards, so get used to it, kiddo.
Thank you. Okay, so I entered entered a contest about writing Black Joy. That was the name of the contest. A friend of mine sent it to me, and I was like, "Have you seen my writing? Why would you send this to me?" But I decided to enter anyway, and I got an email, and I did not read the title of the email, and I said, "Oh, here's the other rejection." And then I kept looking through the email, and I was like, I see second place, third place, I see honorable mentions. Where does it just say, "Thank you for your entry"? And then I read it again, and I realized I won first prize. So I won.
At Grub Street.
Say that again?
At Grub Street. It's a big deal.
At Grub Street.
Yeah,
and
that is.
Thank you. And first prize turned out to be $1,000. So
that's great. Congratulations. That's major.
So many authors on this feed right now are like, getting paid for words. Oh my God.
I know. Yeah. So I'm very happy and very grateful. And I've had a wonderful response to the writing. So anybody that wants me to share, I'm certainly willing to do so. It's only 1,000 words. And what made it so crazy? What made it crazy is that I told everybody on social media, and I think I've only posted on social media 10 times in the last 12 years.
Oh, no.
So 300 people responding. I thought I was going to I did have a few anxiety attacks, but I made it.
That's great.
I made it. All right, thanks for that, Terrence. Here's the intros, guys.
Nice
Okay.
job. Nice job.
Okay. So I'm going to introduce Stephen Hart and tell you a little bit about him. I have not met Stephen, just by phone, so I'm going to know you better tonight.
Yeah.
Since 1986, Stephen has been developing leaders in global companies through his instruction, design, facilitation, and consulting and coaching practice. Not been busy at all. Okay. He sees to it that his programs function as individual and organizational turning points, helping professionals deepen, enliven, and commit to the quality of their influence and impact. His years in practice have only been fueled by his eagerness as a consultant and student of language and conversation. You sound very interesting, Steve. Hart's unique facilitation style merges out of his diverse development story, from advertising to family therapy, from nature-based personal growth programs to theater, and my line is cut off, but there's something about his own entrepreneurship to international living and work. So I'm going to skip a little and say that he was born in Denver and raised throughout North America, Europe, and the Middle East after many years in New York City. And he lives in Chestnut Ridge, New York, which I had to look up. So, and then I'm going to go on and I'm going to tell you about the lovely gentleman next to him. His name is Michael Stern. And I only edited your bio because it was so good. You must make it a story and or a book. Okay. But Michael Stern was born in Manhattan, New York. This year, Michael's January 6th birthday took on a new meaning because of the insurgents on the US Capitol. Born into an elite Jewish modern Orthodox family, he considers his cultural exposure a blessing. Exploring and experiencing Manhattan's museums, concerts, and galleries led him to the world of fashion, entertainment, and captured his heart's purpose. Michael was 14 years old when the Stonewall riots, the uprising of the LGBT community, and the birth of the modern environmental movement began in New York City. Both of these movements rang true to him, and he soon became a teen activist. His life has had some interesting milestones. Attending the opening of Studio 54 in 1977, tell. Becoming a design assistant and building an international career as an entertainment event designer for billionaires, oligarchs, global players, and scores of other beautiful people. I took out like all the fancy names. They are marvelous and many. After moving to Tel Aviv, Israel, to find his spiritual biblical roots, marrying and divorcing 2 Israeli women, becoming the quote, happy father, unquote, of 3 children, now adults, Michael returned to the US. He continued his spiritual inquiry, studied the Kabbalah, and became a death doula and completed his certification to teach Kundalini yoga. So I met Michael while he was teaching yoga, and he helped me through a very difficult period in my life. He taught me how to sit on a bus and breathe in, breathe through one nostril and do yoga and not lose my mind. So he's always been a special gentleman in my life, and I was glad to ask him to participate tonight, and I'll let them tell their story. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wow.
And thank you, Jackie, for inviting us as part of our introduction into open source. And we've been asked to talk about love in the time of COVID. And I'll just start by saying that we have known each other for 6 months. It's just like the last couple of days ago, we celebrated our 6-month anniversary. And we're pretty much in love. So we've decided to talk about what got us here, and then how COVID has influenced the developing of our relationship. So, Michael.
So, pandemic love. I'll just start by saying 4 years ago, 5 years ago, after my third divorce, from the third marriage was to a man, major betrayal and so on, I decided to go celibate and to leave New York and travel the world and not go, and to shut down all of the looking for the right man. And I decided I would go homeless because I needed to find how to be home more. And I spent many months in an island in Thailand, and the COVID brought me back to America on March 17th. And I went to stay with 2 of my children and be Papa in California in Joshua Tree. And I was father and cooking and celibate. And then I came back to New York State, and I was out on Long Island in the Hamptons, and I went to visit friends in upstate New York. And I decided, this was the same friend who told me, Michael, stop looking. Let love find you. Well, that was, like I said, 3-4 years ago. And I said to her, okay, I stopped looking. I don't think it works because nothing's happening. I am going to start looking again. And that was in August, this past August. And I went on Match.com and I started looking, and I like men my own age or a little older. And I found the profile of this man who's sitting next to me, Stephen Hart. And I found him super attractive. We both had ponytails at the time. And he talked about loving to kiss, and he talked about being an agnostic, which I had to look up because I was very spiritual and studying Tantra and Kundalini and Kabbalah. And at least in an agnostic, they have a question mark if there is some higher power. So I said, okay, this is better than being an atheist. And I reached out to him, I pushed like, and he liked me back.
Yeah, I actually sent him an email saying, I kind of get your vibe. So on his profile, he talked very particularly about the kind of studies he's doing. And it's very different than my own background, which has been a little bit more spiritual, but in the sense of really questioning, and a little bit more philosophical than spiritual, maybe. But I'm a child of the 60s, and I read this profile, and I thought, I get who this guy is. So I wrote him back, and we had a phone conversation, and I liked him within the first 5 minutes of the conversation. And I said, which you're not supposed to do early on, I said, let's get together. I know I like you already. You know, you're supposed to sort of take it easier early on. And I invited him to lunch at my house.
Well, we did have a video conversation.
Okay.
And that went well also. And then I came to his house to lunch with a watermelon. It was the end of August.
Right.
And we ate outside on his deck. And I have to say that I found him super attractive, and very much the chemistry was working.
Right.
And we had a great lunch, and then I'll let him say a few words.
Yeah, this was in the, toward the end of a very tough summer for me. Starting in June, I had 3 big things sort of bearing down on me. One was a work project, and Jackie was talking about my work background in corporate life, and I had this project that was so difficult and so taxing. It was basically based on that I decided to retire from corporate. So now I teach college, which I'm delighted to do, love doing. But that project was very intense and very demanding and really hateful for me. Ended successfully, but there was that was half of my brain. And the other half of my brain was taking care of a friend of mine who was 45, a friend of 45 years. And he was in Manhattan by himself during the first spike in COVID. And I was starting to get cryptic messages from him. I didn't quite get what his condition was. So I invited him up here to my house to relax and get some good food and rest and be out of the stress of the city. And fade out, fade in, he was here for several weeks, had to put him into a hospital. And then toward the end of August, found out that it was stage 4 lymphoma. And the day that Michael came for lunch, about an hour before that, I had heard from the hospital that my friend only had about a couple of days to live. So
oh my God.
When Michael came in walked onto my deck, he was dressed very sharp in a very summery kind of way. And I could tell this is a guy who has taste. And he was entrancing to me in a lot of ways. And so we were having this wonderful conversation, and I decided not to tell him about my friend Christopher at all. And then he had such energy and such, as he says, the chemistry was strong. I decided at the end of the lunch to tell him about Christopher and how this was weighing on me, and he gave me a hug.
Well, what happened, we brought the plates into the kitchen from the deck, and he was standing by the kitchen sink and turned around and stood there, and I was in the center island, and he said, Michael, I hadn't told you, but I got news about this dear friend who's been staying here, who's going to have 2 days to live. And I had a minute to call upon all of the teachings of my spiritual higher consciousness of compassion and override the sensual and beautiful attraction that I had to him and say, Stephen, I think you need a COVID hug. And he said to me, what's that? And I said, it's as I walked towards him, it's when you turn your head that way and I turn my head this way and we hug. And we did. And I used all of my Kundalini breath powers and we breathed together, inhaling and exhaling for a number of minutes.
Great hug.
And I took away all of any of that chemistry of the lower chakras. And I really... And then he even started to cry and he said, Michael, I hadn't realized how long it's been since I hugged. Yeah. And I stepped away and that was, and left and wished him good luck. And then I, a week later, left with one of my sons to go to Israel to quarantine there and spend a month there in Tel Aviv. And did reach out to Stephen, again, using all of my self-control and discipline to not call him and be all over him. And I just got video with him twice and told my friends, I think I met a whole different man that's going to be the man that I'll be with. Oh, and then came back to America a month later and we made our next date.
And the reason, by the way, that I was so surprised by the depth of the hug is that I kind of was celibate myself. I had been married 20 years ago, divorced after 5 years, and it was a shocking experience for me, and wanted to sort of discover what all of that was about. So I spent a long time by myself, and happily, ultimately, to be independent and to have a little more self-knowledge and a little more sense of my own value, and was still, though, isolated pretty much. And then COVID, by the time COVID came, I was feeling pretty confident in being isolated, and I can handle this, I'm fine. So the hug really was important. And then the date that he's talking about was also important, because as he mentioned in my profile, I said, kissing is really the #1 thing for me. And he came over, we had dinner, we talked, we kept talking. And then, as is case with a lot of men in our situation, people just kind of go to bed. And we decided pretty early we didn't want to do that. And what we did instead was we did some kissing.
And I want to say that in my celibacy, I joined the Cuddlist Society.
That's right.
And there's a big Cuddlist movement happening in America.
Who knew?
And
Who knew?
I knew about it. And I loved cuddling, and it releases all the right hormones. And I knew that, like, you start with heavy fireworks and then it's usually down.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I knew that cuddling releases the endorphins, and I shared about cuddling and he shared about kissing, and we created our boundaries, and we really stayed together that night, clothed and honoring this new coming together of the beautiful men that each of us are in our wholeness and fullness. And then I went home. That night I also discovered, because it was a month after his friend passed, that his dog, who was his best friend, named Dude, was very sick, and I'd noticed he'd been kind of a little crippled when I came, but I thought it was just his weight. And Stephen told me that he's really not doing well. And the next days that followed, we talked, and the dog was not doing well. And I offered to Stephen that he pick me up. Where I was staying was on the way to the vet hospital. And he picked me up, and I went with him to the vet, and the vet told him it's going to happen in the next few weeks, the next month. And then Stephen said to me, as I dropped him off he dropped me off at my home. He said, Michael, I'd really appreciate, you've been great today, if you'd be with me during the dude's passing.
Oh, wow.
So I told the same girlfriend who had told me, do not go looking for love. I told her, and she said, well, pack your bags. It just invited you to be with him. He really just said, I'd like you to be with me during it, but I decided that he meant I should be with him. So the next day I showed up, and I made the bed in the extra bedroom, and I said, I'm here to be with you. And we would lie together, fully clothed, and the dog would put his head on my groin and look in my eyes, and I knew the dog knew that I was going to continue being with Stephen.
Well, and it was just a really tough time for me, because this was a dog who was 5 years old, and he and I were, best friends, really joined like I'd never had a relationship like that before. Yeah. And so when the dog, Dude, was really getting more and more stricken and more debilitated, Michael kept stepping forward and being compassionate and being supportive and being there for me in an extraordinary way. So the dog died on October 13th. We put him down, and I asked Michael to be with me when we did that, and he was. And then we had a ceremony of scattering his ashes on this promontory above the Hudson River up in Upper Nyack. And it was just a powerful ceremony, but there was this experience for me of this deep friendship that I had with this dog that I loved so dearly and was so shockingly taken from me. and the grief and the mourning that just took me by such surprise. I mean, it shouldn't have, but I've never felt such intensity about that, about another being, maybe. And there was his passing, and then Michael's coming into my life. And it's not like, you know, there's a dog and there's a human being, but my heart was involved in both situations.
Absolutely.
And so what's happened since then is, because Michael was deliberately homeless, houseless is a better way to put it, because he had a lot of friends and places that he'd stayed all over the world and we talked about, he has had a multi-centric life. I've had a unicentric life over the last 20 years, building my home on my own. And it became pretty, I mean, this is kind of a COVID twist on it, because he's 65 at the time, I'm 71. And we kind of talked early on about our age, tells us our experience has been a lot over the years. And I know some mistakes that I've made. I know I'm not going to make anymore. And I know that if I feel this about this man, that I want to be able to experience this, whatever ends up. And so I basically said, why don't you stop being multicentric? And why don't you move in and we'll see how this works? So he moved in really about 2 weeks,
November 10th.
2 months after we.
Oh my!
I had thought that I had rented a place in Rhinebeck, thinking I'm going to meet all the other guys who left New York City to discover nature and other things. But it was COVID, and I met Stephen, and it's like, this man could be or is the one. And I told my friends, I love his home, I love his tchotchkes. And like,
he calls them tchotchkes, I call it art.
I know. Yep.
And that's a thing about a pandemic love, is that, you know, there's no distractions, there's no dating and meeting in restaurants and bars and going to theater. It really is, the silver lining is that invitation for intimacy, and not the whole show, and not the, you know, how smooth operator you are in the fast lane. And
which we both know how to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So it really is the silver lining for intimacy. And we've really been on the express train of facing all of anything that gets in the way, I would say. We found early on, and each of us had certain patterns that could show up, and we got to face them in this timely manner when
are getting to face them.
Yes.
I'm a little broke there.
Well, I mean, it's, for me, it's all been, the pandemic has enclosed us, of course, like everybody else, but it's provided a certain degree of focus and maybe a rigor or a discipline of, if we're going to feel as intensely as we do about each other, because we do, and if we're going to take this as seriously as we are, because we are, then the environment that means we're at home a lot, we don't socialize, we shop together, we do the necessary together, but you know, we do a little bit of socializing, but not nearly as much as we used to. All of that has created this kind of container, I feel, for us to discover each other and to slow down. I mean, we're at our age, it's nice to slow down anyway, but being able to not be pulled in different directions as he's describing, and focus and take the day-to-day together in our little bubble. You know, I think, you know, as things start opening up over the next couple of months, and venues and opportunities and theaters and schools and all that stuff, you know, the light will get brighter and brighter. We'll transition, and we've been conscious about that. We've been talking about that, about transitioning from this bubble into something larger. And that's going to be a transition. But I do feel like there's some kind of cauldron that we have been building and gathering good energy and good forces within between us that we can use to build from. So
I want to add that for me, intimacy is something that I never really felt I achieved or found the right partner for. And nor was it ever the right time for me. I was always looking outside. I always thought it was about being the right match because we're like cool in the groove and in the move. And then that's why we're good, well matched. And I really have to say, I'm so grateful to COVID and the pandemic to really have opened my heart to love and let love and simplicity, minimalism of life enrich me and make me fall in love really with myself also, and have a wonderful chance for a great new life. We always talk about, somehow Stephen said 14 years. Michael, we have to have 14 more years just like this. And I'm like, okay.
And I couldn't put it better myself. So thank you for the opportunity for sharing our story.
Thank you. Okay. Your story was wonderful. And unanticipated, because Michael was like, "Can I tell it with my partner?" I was like, "You've got a partner? I didn't know." So, and then it turns out to be an absolutely wonderful story. I will just jump in and say, oh my God, you got me a Kundalini breathing. Oh my goodness.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes.
Okay.
What is a death doula like? Is that what I think it is? Someone that just helps people transition to death?
Yes, and I studied at the Menla Institute, which is part of Tibet House, with Dr. Robert Thurman, and they taught a course, and then I got certified, and then I volunteered in hospice and got to experience, guiding the dying. A doula for the dying.
It's a really admirable job that you do.
Yeah. Before we take a break, I want to tell you that when I spoke with Michael and Stephen, they both said, we hope open source can become one of those places that we endeavor to once the world opens up again. And so we are all looking forward to that happening. And I told them about the tater tots after the storytelling. So
thank you, Jackie. Thanks for the warm welcome.
Jackie. That's great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, let me just interrupt here. So are we taking a break? Because we only have one more storyteller. I don't know. Should we have a show of hands? Who needs to
I don't think we have to. I think that.
Yeah, don't freak me out.
I think that's a good segue to Monica too.
Yeah, so we're gonna let Monica talk a little bit about open source gallery, and then Megan will be our next storyteller.
Yes, sounds good. So yeah, I hope that we can actually be maybe at open source next month again. Yeah. Already this month, we have something going at the gallery again, which is really cool. It's James Hannaham, Jim Crow Hell No is the title of the show. And James Hannaham is the artist. It has been really great because there's this huge sign outside that is blinking and says, Jim Crow Hell No. And it really does kind of alert the neighborhood and creates a real great.
Yeah, in the last couple nights, Monica went out and had hot cider and wine, glühwein, and the artist was there, and so it was kind of nice to go on that nice warm night we had, sort of Wednesday, and look at the show in the darkness. And
it's a series of signs, correct?
Yeah,
right.
You want to talk a little bit more?
Signs that it's a lot of. So he's a writer. actually also, and is very, very good with words. So there's science, ideas of science that he, from the 50s, from the Jim Crow era, but totally changed and made towards
kind of
like
ironic and funny and
right.
But in the style of when you first look at it, you're like, oh, it's going to be one of those racist signs from the 50s or 40s,
but they say with things like Negroes adored, or
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, reparations parking and things like that.
So I don't know,
Nice.
laugh and cry at the same time. I think it makes everybody really emotional. It's it really creates a lot of that, I feel like. So it's great. And then we also do the Church of Monica again a lot. Every month we are really scheduled ahead of time. So that's always every second Sunday of the month. Right now it's still on Zoom too. Eventually we will bring that back live also. That's always at 11 a.m. It's not religious. It's only kind of creating community and taking that from the church.
Reparations parking only would be a great guerrilla art idea, where you could just print out a whole bunch of them and like bring them to Whole Foods and just in the middle of the night,
Right.
All
right. Well, yeah. So it is still open. It's just sometimes online.
Right.
So I'd like to introduce my friend Megan Culhane Galbraith, who is a writer and visual artist, another woman of many talents. And she has had a lot of memoir essays published in Tupelo Quarterly, About Place Journal, Hobart, Long Reads, Hotel America, Catapult, Bennington Review, among others. She is currently, you're in the, what's your official job title at Bennington?
I'm the associate director of the Bennington Writing Center.
Okay, so I didn't want to say the wrong thing. But anyway, she's sort of the guiding force to all the flailing students that are there. I was one of them, so that's how I met her. But she also runs the Dollhouse, which is it a gallery space or?
No, right now I'm sort of on Instagram. It's just a little weirdy Instagram space.
Okay. Because I know you had like a real exhibit in Troy or something.
Oh yeah, it's been, and I did have a little thing in the gallery here, and I've had some work in Collar Works in Troy and a number of other places.
Anyway, her stuff's really cool, and she also has a memoir coming out in May 21. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be called The Guild of the Infant Savior, an Adopted Child's Memory Book. So I'm looking forward to reading that because she's great. So let me stop talking and hand it over to Megan Galbraith.
Thanks, Lily. Thank you, Jackie and Monica too, and to Open Source Gallery. It's really nice to be invited to read here. I've never really done storytelling, so I'm a little nervous. Anyway, I'll dive right in. And I hope this is, I don't know if I should say trigger warning because I swear a lot, but.
Go for it. Go for it.
Don't feel like you're in our living room. It's all good.
So it's New Year's
that
Eve.
name is Irish. You have the allowance.
Exactly. So it's New Year's Eve, 2020, and like all modern fairy tales, this story starts with a DM and ends with a ghosting. So I was like minding my own business when this guy slides into my DMs with flattery about my forthcoming book, which deals with abandonment as much as it does with adoption. So how do you really ever tell anything about a person from a Twitter profile anyway? So, I mean, he looked small. He didn't seem to be married. I was skeptical, but after a couple of days, he proved to be kind and even thoughtful. I asked what he was looking forward to once the pandemic was over, and he said, just the pleasure of looking into someone's eyes while we talk and hold hands. And, you know, I have to be honest, that made me kind of swoony. So we traded numbers and I suggested a phone call. Now, my apartment here is haunted by the ghosts of ghosters. I sage it regularly to clear out the bad juju. I Marie Kondo the place of all the red flags I've ignored. I convinced myself that I know better. So we talked on New Year's Eve for hours. It was effortless and fun, but I had to get off. I had to go to a Zoom party with my friends. Call me back later, he said. And his voice was like really smoky, like, you know, you're in a dive bar. So I did. He was into his second whiskey. I'd had wine with my friends. We were both really giggly. His voice was low and like super sexy. And I told him so. Are we gonna have phone sex, he says. Now, I've made a pact with myself, my little Scorpio self, to not get physical too quickly. And we'd had that, you know, I'm interested in a relationship, not some random hookup conversation. But I was lonely and horny, and this was a pandemic, and it's been dragging on. And no human has touched my body in a year. And his voice, whoo-hoo, he knew what he was doing. I made him do most of the talking. So I dated early in the pandemic thinking, surely, like Stephen and you guys, surely men would be interested in deeper relationships, in clear communication, in saying all the things that needed to be said. I figured with death knocking on our door, surely a heart might open up. A real one might come knocking. Sadly, vulnerability is much scarier than death still. So we fucked each other by fucking ourselves. We kissed at midnight. He made plans to call me. He postponed twice. Then he didn't text back. And I saw another ghost. So I had a one-night stand with my own damn hand, friends. What took me weeks to get over wasn't him or his fake sincerity or his excuses. I wasn't even really into that guy. It was just that in fucking myself, I fucked myself. I'd ignored my intuition. I'd ignored my red flags. I'm separated, but technically still married. I wanted to smack my own horny face like Cher in Moonstruck. Snap out of it. Self-abandonment is the worst kind of abandonment. I've been reading Anne Sexton's book of poetry, Transformations, and I love her retellings of fairy tales and the way she takes back her power. In his foreword to the book, Kurt Vonnegut talks about his famous graph. Lily might know this, of a character and plot arc using the tale of Cinderella. This, he says, is the basic formula for all great stories. So I don't know if you can see this, but.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Okay, at the beginning, we find Cinderella, right? Working her tail off at the fire. She climbs up with the help of her fairy godmother, a glittery dress, and an invitation to the prince's ball. The clock strikes midnight. They kiss. She returns to her rags and her servitude. But lo, here comes the prince to rescue her, and everything ends happily ever after. Right? I want to fucking scream. The happy ending isn't where the story ends. The ending is where the story begins. That infinity symbol is reciprocity. So, like, what do we know about the reciprocity of the prince? Is he doing the laundry, like, without being asked? Is he handling the childcare without calling it babysitting? Is Cindy throwing her glass slipper in a rage because what she really wants to shatter is the glass ceiling? Is she stuck in a fairy tale of a marriage where she's still doing all the chores and all the emotional labor? As young girls, people are always going on about like happy endings. And as women, we learn this is just a euphemism for a hand job. It's no wonder fairy tales have been rewritten by the likes of women who want to take back their voice and their power and their bodies. So lately, I've been showing up for myself, getting better at seeing the red flags, shutting down the gate crashers. Like, no is a full goddamn sentence. I forgive myself. I start over with my plot. I learn to begin at the end. And when I start dating again, which, you know, I'm gonna say in my profile, write me a 500-word essay about how you're not gonna waste my time. And I saw that on Twitter. This may not be the love story you came here to hear, but I think it's much better.
Yes,
Thank you.
Oh, it's great.
Thank you.
Great. Great.
Oh, thank you. Oh, Megan, that was great.
Thanks, Ethel. Thanks, Lily. You wouldn't expect as much from me.
Oh, no, it was great. No. Yeah, so what else we got next month is our March. I noticed that the days line up, so don't be thinking you're confused. It's actually the same date. It's March 26th is the last Friday of the month. So that's going to be our next How to Build a Fire. And I want to thank everybody for telling stories and sharing. And we might even have one visitor from South Carolina who will be joining us, Nicola Waldron. She's checking it out. So I hope she'll decide to tell a story. But until then, thank you.
Thank you.
That has to be one of the most quotable stories I've heard so far.
The most quotable?
One of the most quotable. I fuck myself by fucking myself.
Right.
Ghosted the ghosters, or the ghost of ghosters is really good.
Thanks.
I can tell you're a great teacher, and I love visual aids, so thank you so much.
Vonnegut, man. Kurt Vonnegut.
I love it.
And the happy ending. I like that.
Oh, yeah, it's nothing but a euphemism for a hand job.
Yeah, there you go.
What?
Just, and I'm sober, you guys, so like imagine if I was drunk.
Yeah.
We can't wait to see your book.
Oh, thanks, Jackie. And congratulations on your, that's amazing.
Oh, yes, congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations.
I'll put a link in the chat if you guys want to grab that before you get off. Get off line. During this month.
Oh, drats.
Just put your OnlyFans account in the chat.
Yeah. I might not have one of those.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Than death.
All right. We will plan to be in the studio, but we will also be online and on Zoom next month.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, everybody. Great meeting.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, storytellers.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Good night, Evie. Good night, Shauna.
Lovely to meet all of you.
Oh, and Golda, yes, thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to come to Brooklyn.
We'll be waiting.
You got it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.